Sir Keir Starmer is making millions and millions of British people suffer just so that he and Rachel Reeves can cling on to their jobs for another few months. The day he won the election, he said this.
We've changed the Labour Party, returned it to service, and that is how we will govern. Country first, party second.
He said he couldn't afford to scrap the two-child benefit cap.
If you have more than 2 children at the moment, you don't get benefits. Would that change under a Labour government?
We're not changing that policy.
You're not changing the two-child policy of benefits, OK.
He knew he needed to cut welfare. That's why he tried to pass the welfare reform bill in June, but Labour MPs revolted.
Welcome back to the British Report, the only place where we dissect Westminster's circus with the precision of a surgeon and the sarcasm of a pub regular who has seen it all. Today we are talking about a man who has turned not answering into a competitive sport. We are of course talking about Sir Keir Starmer, but something has changed in the hallowed halls of Parliament. Usually it is the opposition calling him out, but now even the House of Commons official social media team seems to have admitted defeat. They have literally stopped pretending he answers questions. It is the political equivalent of a restaurant changing its sign from "we serve food" to "people sit here and look at menus." We are diving deep into the mockery, the red folder lifebuoy, and why the Prime Minister is currently being compared to a plastic bag in the wind. You do not want to miss this. Quick favour, if you are loving this, hit that subscribe button. Over 92% of viewers have not yet. It is free, takes a second and means the world to us. Thanks if you did. Now back to the show. In the world of diplomacy and politics, words are everything. Every comma, every adjective and every verb is curated by a small army of people in grey suits. So when the official House of Commons social media account, the digital voice of British democracy, decides to change its weekly phrasing, people notice. For the entirety of last year, every Wednesday, like clockwork, the Commons X account would post something along the lines of, "Today, Sir Keir Starmer appeared in the chamber and answered questions from MPs. It was a bold claim. Some might say it was a work of fiction that would make JK..." Naturally, the account was ridiculed weekly. Users would flock to the comments asking, which questions did he answer exactly? Or is answering now a synonym for reading from a script about 2010? It became a running joke. But as we entered 2026, it seems the social media team finally snapped. They could no longer maintain the charade, the new wording. Today, Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer faced questions from MPs.
Dickensian cuts belong to a different era and a different party.
It is with a heavy, broken heart that I will be voting against this bill today.
This is crazy, man. This is outrageous, man.
Do you see what they did there? They shifted from a verb of action and resolution, answered, to a verb of mere survival. Faced. It is a linguistic retreat of epic proportions. To face a question just means you were in the room when the question was shouted at you. You face a hurricane, you do not necessarily stop it. You face a firing squad, you do not necessarily convince them to put the guns down. By changing this one word, the House of Commons has essentially acknowledged what the British public has known for months. Keir Starmer is the Houdini of the dispatch box. He can make any inquiry disappear into a cloud of pre-scripted waffle. This change was not just a clerical error. When the Express pointed it out, the response was a classic bit of bureaucratic gymnastics. A spokesperson said they regularly refresh and update content to signpost the business of the House. Translation, we got tired of people calling us liars in the mentions, so we found a word that is technically true, but spiritually depressing. But why the change now? Well, it might have something to do with the fact that Starmer's popularity ratings are currently doing a very convincing impression of a lead balloon. According to recent YouGov and Opinium data, his net favourability has plummeted to record lows, down to -46, which for those keeping score at home puts him in the same political icy tundra occupied by Theresa May just before she exited through the back door of number 10. A senior Tory source recently gave us a vivid image of what it looks like from the benches opposite. They claimed that as his popularity has tanked, Starmer has basically stopped trying to engage. They said, and I quote, "He grips his red folder like a lifebuoy, bleating his pre-scripted lines and never thinking on his feet. It is a devastating critique because it rings true. If you watch PMQs lately, Starmer looks less like a nimble prosecutor and more like a man reading the terms and conditions of a software update. There is no charm, no spontaneity, and certainly no answers. He is a Prime Minister who seems to be in office, but not in control. Think about the analogy of the red folder as a lifebuoy. Imagine you are the captain of a ship, let us call it the SS Great Britain. The waves are crashing, the hull is leaking, and the passengers are screaming for directions. Instead of grabbing the wheel, the captain is clutching a piece of floating plastic and reading a manual on how the previous captain, who left years ago, was actually much worse at sailing. It does not inspire confidence, does it?
Starmer U-turned on it. Tanking in the opinion polls, Starmer is now the least popular Prime Minister since records began. Rachel Reeves is now the least popular Chancellor since records began. Labour MPs are openly plotting to oust them both. One even told the BBC he'd give up his own seat for Andy Burnham.
But you know what? You know, if I'm going to sit here and say, you know, country before party, party before personal ambition, then yes, I have to say yes, don't I?
When a leader stops thinking on their feet, they become predictable. And in the bear pit of Westminster, being predictable is a death sentence. Kemi Badenoch, the Conservative leader, has realised this, and she is currently using Starmer as a metaphorical punching bag. Let us look at a specific example from this week, because the faced but did not answer phenomenon was on full display. Kemi Badenoch stood up and asked a very simple, very direct question about business rates. Now, business rates might sound like the most boring topic in the world, but if you are a pub landlord or a small shop owner, they are the difference between staying open and boarding up the windows. There has been a massive U-turn involving business rates, one of many in Starmer's burgeoning collection, and Badenoch wanted clarity. Pub landlords are desperate. They need to know what their tax bill is going to look like so they can decide if they can afford to keep the lights on. Starmer's response: he did everything except answer. He talked about the black hole in the finances. He talked about the Tory legacy. He probably would have talked about the weather if the Speaker had let him. Badenoch was having none of it. She blasted him, saying, he didn't answer the question about business rates. It sounds like he doesn't know what his policy is, and this has been a farce from start to finish. This is the Starmer special. You ask him about a tax hike, and he tells you about a bridge built in 2012. You ask him about the cost of living, and he gives you a lecture on his career as the Director of Public Prosecutions. It is a masterclass in the dodge, duck, dip, dive and dodge school of communication. But while it might work in a courtroom to delay a trial, it is infuriating for a public that actually needs to know how they are going to pay their bills. The farce Badenoch describes is becoming the defining theme of this administration. We have had U-turns on digital IDs, U-turns on farm taxes, and now this confusion over business rates. It is no wonder Badenoch compared him to a plastic bag in the wind. He has no internal compass, he just blows whichever way the latest focus group or backbench rebellion pushes him. In an attempt to distract from the fact that he is effectively a policy weather vane, Starmer has recently tried to inject some humour into his performances. This is usually about as successful as a dad joke at a funeral. Just last week, he tried to mock the Conservatives by saying they have held more positions than the Kama Sutra. Now, regardless of your political leaning, that is a bold line for a man whose own policy platform has more U-turns than a driving test. The House of Commons went silent. It was a joke that exposed the deeper flaws in his communication. It felt forced, it felt awkward, and it felt like a man trying very hard to be one of the lads while simultaneously being the most Sir Keir person in the room.
The Prime Minister wants to talk about defections. Let me tell him that when I had someone undermining my party, I sacked him. If he sacked... Mr. Speaker, we all know that if he sacked everyone undermining his party, his front bench would be empty.
The irony was not lost on anyone. Here is a Prime Minister accusing others of changing positions while he is currently retreating on almost every major campaign pledge he made. It is projection on a grand scale. Critics pointed out that while he was busy making jokes about ancient Indian texts, his government was facing genuine heat over housing targets and economic pressures. When you are the Prime Minister and you are losing your own backbenchers, you need substance, not smutty jokes. But substance is exactly what is missing. The red folder is full of scripts, but the scripts do not have the answers to the questions the country is asking. Whether it is the diplomatic row with Donald Trump over tariffs and Greenland, or the domestic crisis of rising inflation, Starmer's default setting is wait and see or blame the other lot. So where does this leave us? We have a Prime Minister who faces questions but does not answer them. We have an official Parliament account that has effectively given up on him. And we have a public that is increasingly disengaged. The polling data from January 2026 is terrifying for the Labour front bench. When voters are asked who would make the best Prime Minister, Starmer holds a narrow 1-point lead over Badenoch, 21% to 20%. But here is the kicker, 48% of the public choose neither. Almost half the country looks at the two main options and says, no thank you, I would rather have a root canal. Even worse for Starmer when put in a direct matchup with Nigel Farage, the Reform UK leader opens a 6-point lead. Let that sink in. The Prime Minister of a majority government is currently trailing a man who, until recently, was considered a fringe figure. This is what happens when you dodge your way through leadership. You lose the benefit of the doubt. You lose the trust of the voters who put you there. The nightmare leaks coming out of the Treasury and Number 10 suggest that the internal friction is reaching a breaking point. Backbenchers are terrified. They see the polls, they see the U-turns, and they see a leader who cannot think on his feet. They are worried they are going to be one-term wonders. As we move further into 2026, the question is no longer, will Keir Starmer answer the question? We already know the answer to that. No, he will not. The real question is, how much longer can he survive by just facing them? The House of Commons might have updated their social media phrasing to reflect reality, but the British public is looking for a reality where the person in charge actually knows what the policy is. Keir Starmer might be gripping that red folder like a lifebuoy, but if the ship keeps sinking at this rate, no amount of pre-scripted lines or Kama Sutra jokes is going to save him from the icy waters of a political collapse. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this breakdown, let us know in the comments. Do you think Starmer is in office but not in control, or is he just biding his time? See you in the next one.